Okay, so they were about to bait him. But he wasn't going to go for that. I was off across the platform. Oh, I have to set my alarm. Hold on. Off across the lawn. I was astonished at my own speed. I leapt over witches' feet right and left, and in no time at all I was down the steps and on the floor of the ballroom itself and skittering off among the rows of chairs. What I especially liked was the fact that I made no sound at all as I ran. I was swift and silent mover. And quite amazingly, the pain had all gone now. I was feeling quite remarkable. It is not a bad thing, after all, I thought to myself, to be tiny as well as speedy, when there's a bunch of dangerous females after your blood. I selected the back leg of a chair and squeezed up against it and kept very, very still. In the distance, the Grand High Witch was shouting, "Leave the little stinkpot alone. It is not worthy bothering about. It is only a mouse now. Somebody will soon catch it. Let us go out of here. The meeting is over. Unlock the doors and shove off to the Sunshine Terrace to have tea with the idiotic manager." Bruno. I peeped around the leg of the chair and watched the hundreds of witches' feet walk through the doors of the ballroom. When they had all gone and the place was absolutely silent, I began to move cautiously about on the floor. Suddenly, I remembered Bruno. He must surely be around here somewhere. "Bruno," I called. I wasn't seriously expecting that I would be able to speak at all now that I had become a mouse, so I got the shock of my life when I heard my own voice come out of my own perfectly normal, rather loud voice coming out of my own tiny mouth. It was wonderful. I was thrilled. I tried it again. "Bruno Jenkins! Where are you? If you can hear me, give a shout." My voice was exactly the same and just as loud as it had been when I was a boy. "Hey there, Bruno Jenkins! Where are you?" There was no answer. I pottered about between the seat legs, trying to get used to being so close to the ground. I decided I rather liked it. You were probably wondering why I wasn't at all depressed. I found myself thinking, what's so wonderful about being a little boy, anyway? Was it necessarily any better than being a mouse? I know that mice get hunted, and that sometimes they do get poisoned, or they get caught. But little boys sometimes get killed too. Little boys can be run over by motor cars. Or they can die of some awful illness. Little boys have to go to school. Mice don't. Mice don't have to pass exams. Mice don't have to worry about money. Mice, as far as I can see, have only two enemies: humans and cats. My grandmother is a human, but I don't know for certain that she will always love me for who I am. And she never, thank goodness, keeps a cat. When mice grow up, they don't ever have to go to war and fight against other mice. Mice, I felt pretty certain, all like each other. People don't. Yes, I told myself, I don't think it is all that bad to be a mouse. I was wandering around the ballroom thinking about all this when I spotted another mouse. It was crouching on the floor, holding a piece of bread in its front paws and nibbling away at it with great gusto. It must be Bruno. "Hello, Bruno." He glanced at me for about 2 seconds, then went on eating. "What have you found?" One of them dropped it. "It's a fish paste sandwich. Pretty good." He, too, spoke with a perfectly normal voice. One would have expected that a mouse, if it was going to talk at all, would do so with the smallest squeak voice you could imagine. It was terrifically funny to hear the voice of a rather loud-mouthed Bruno coming out of the tiny mouth's face. "Listen, Bruno," I said. "Now that we are both mice, I think we ought to start thinking a little bit about the future." He stopped eating and stared at me with small black eyes. "What do you mean, we? The fact that you're a mouse has nothing to do with me." "But you're a mouse, too, Bruno. Don't be a fool. I'm not a mouse." "I'm afraid you are, Bruno." "I most certainly am not," he shouted. "Why are you insulting me? I haven't been rude to you. Why do you call me a mouse? Don't you know what's happened to you?" "What on earth are you talking about?" "I have to inform you," I said. "That's not very long ago you were turned into a mouse by witches. Then they did it to me." "You are lying. I am not a mouse. If you hadn't been so busy guzzling that sandwich," I said, "you would have noticed your hairy paws. Take a look at them. Bruno looked down at his paws. Good grief. I am a mouse. You wait till my father hears about this. He may think it's an improvement, I said. I don't want to be a mouse. I refuse to be a mouse. I am Bruno Jenkins. Oops, sorry guys. There are worse things than being a mouse, I said. You can live in a hole. I don't want to live in a hole, said Bruno. You can creep into a larder at night and nibble through the packets of raisins and cornflakes and chocolate biscuits and everything else you can find. You can stay there all night eating yourself silly. That's what mice do. That's a thought, Bruno said. But how am I going to open the door of the fridge to get out a cold chicken? And all those leftovers. That's something I do every evening at home. Maybe a rich father will get you a special little mouse fridge all to yourself, one that you can open. You say a witch did this to me? Which witch? The one who gave you the chocolate bar in the lobby yesterday. Don't you remember? The filthy old cow. I'll get her for this. Where is she? Who is she? Forget it. You don't have a hope. Your biggest problem at the moment is your parents. How are you going to explain this? Will they treat you with sympathy and kindness? Bruno considered this for a moment. I think that my father is going to be a bit put out. And what about your mother? My mother is terrified of mice, said Bruno. Then you've got yourself a problem, haven't you? Why only me? What about you? Oh, my grandmother will understand perfectly. She knows all about witches. Bruno took another bite of his sandwich. What do you suggest? I suggest we both go first of all and consult my grandmother. She'll know exactly what to do. I moved toward the door, which was standing open. Bruno, still grasping part of a sandwich in one paw, followed after me. When we get out into the corridor, I said, we're going to run like mad. Stick close to the wall all the way and follow me. Do not talk and do not let anyone see you. And don't forget that just about anyone who catches sight of you will try to kill you. I snatched the sandwich, put out of his paw, and threw it away. Here it goes. Keep behind me. Hello, Grandmama. As soon as I was out of the ballroom, I took off like a flash. I streaked down the corridor, went through the lounge and the reading room and the library and the drawing room, and came to the stairs. Up the stairs I went, jumping quite easily from one to the other, keeping well in against the wall of the time. Are you with me, Bruno? Right here, he said. My grandmother's room was up here. We're on the 5th floor. It was quite a climb. But we had made it there without meeting a single person on the way because everyone was using the lift, the elevator up and down. On the 5th floor, I raced along the corridor to the door of my grandmother's room. A pair of her shoes was standing outside the door to be cleaned. Bruno was alongside of me. What do we do now? He said. Suddenly, I caught sight of the chambermaid coming along the corridor towards us. I saw at once that she was the one who had reported me to the manager for keeping white mice. Not, therefore, the sort of person I wanted to meet in my present condition. Quick, I said to Bruno, hide in one of those shoes. I hopped into one shoe, and Bruno hopped into the other. I waited for the maid to walk past us. But she didn't. When she came to the shoes, she bent down and picked them up. In so doing, she put her hand right inside the one I was hiding in, with her fingers touching me. I bit it. It was a silly thing to do, but I did it instinctually without thinking. The maid let out a scream that must have been heard by ships far out into the channel, English Channel, and she dropped the shoes and ran like the wind down the corridor. My grandmother's door opened. What on earth is going on out here? She said. I darted between her legs into the room, and Bruno followed me. Close the door, Grandmama, please. Hurry, I said. She looked around, and saw 2 small brown mice on the carpet. Please close it, I said, and this time she actually saw me talking and recognized my voice. She froze and became absolutely motionless. Every part of her body, her fingers, her hands, and her arms and head became suddenly as stiff as a marble statue. Her face turned even paler, like marble, and her eyes were stretched so wide I could see the white all around them. Then she started to tremble. I thought she was going to faint and fall over. Please close the door quickly, Grandmama. That awful maid might come in. She somehow managed to gather herself together enough to close the door. She leaned against it, staring down at me with a white face shaking all over. I saw tears beginning to come out of her eyes and go dribbling down her cheeks. Don't cry, Grandmama. Things could be a lot worse. I did get away from them. I'm still alive, and so is Bruno. Very slowly, she bent down and picked me up with one hand. Then she picked up Bruno with the other hand and put us both on the table. There was a bowl of bananas in the center of the table, and Bruno jumped straight into it and began tearing away with his teeth at one of the banana skins to get at the fruit inside. My grandmother grasped the arm of her chair to steady herself, but her eyes never left me. Sit down, dear Grandmama, she collapsed into her chair. Oh, my darling. Oh, my poor sweet darling. What have they done to you? I know what they've done, Grandmama, and I know what I am. But the funny thing is that I don't honestly feel especially bad about it. I don't even feel angry. In fact, I feel rather good. I know I'm not a boy any longer, and I never will be again, but I'll be quite all right as long as there's always you to look after me. I was not just trying to console her. I was being absolutely honest about the way I felt. You may think it odd that I wasn't weeping for myself. It was odd. I simply can't explain it. Of course I'll look after you. Who is the other one? That is the boy called Bruno Jenkins. They got to him first. My grandmother took a long black cigar out of a case in her handbag and put it in her mouth. Then she got out of a box of matches. She struck a match, but her fingers were shaking so much that the flame kept missing the end of the cigar. When she got it lit at last, she took a long pull and sucked in the smoke. That seemed to calm her down a bit. Where did it happen? She whispered. Where is the witch now? Is she in the lobby? Is she in the hotel? Grandmama, it wasn't just one. It was hundreds. Hundreds. They're all over the place. They're right here in this hotel at this very moment. She leaned forward and stared at me. You don't mean to tell me they're holding the annual meeting right here in this hotel? They've held it, Grandmama. It's finished. I heard it all of it, including the Grand High Witch herself. They're downstairs now. They're pretending they're the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. They're all having tea with the manager. And they caught you? They smelt me out, I said. Dog droppings, was it? She said, sighing. I'm afraid so. But it wasn't strong. They very nearly didn't smell me because I haven't had a bath in ages. Children should never have baths, my grandmother said. It's a dangerous habit. I agree, Grandmama. She paused, sucking at her cigar. Do you really mean to tell me that they are now all downstairs having tea? I'm certain of it, Grandmama. There was another pause. I could see the old glint of excitement glowing in the back. Tell me everything from the beginning, and please hurry. I took a deep breath and began to talk. I told her about going to the ballroom and hiding behind the screen and to do my mouse training. I told her about the notice saying Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. I told her all about the women coming in and sitting down, about the small woman who appeared on the stage and took off her mask. But when it came to describing what her face looked like underneath the mask, I simply couldn't find the right words. It was horrible, Grandmama. Oh, it was so horrible. It was something rotten. Go on, don't stop. Then I told her about all the others taking off their wigs and their gloves and their shoes, and how I saw before me bald, pimply heads, and how these women's fingers had been little claws, and how their feet had no toes. My grandmother had come forward now in her armchair so that she was sitting right on the edge of it. Both her hands were cupped over the gold knob of the stick she always used when she was walking, and she was staring at me with eyes as bright as two stars. Then I told her how the Grand High Witch had shot out the fiery, white-hot sparks, and how they had turned one of the other witches into a puff of smoke. I've heard about that, my grandmother said, but I've never quite believed it. You were the first non-witch ever to see that happen. The Grand High Witch's most famous punishment is known as getting fired. And all the other witches are petrified of having it done to them. I am told that the Grand High Witch makes it a rule to fry at least one witch at the annual meeting. She does it in order to keep the rest of them on their toes. But they don't have any toes, said Grandmama. Oh, I know they don't, my darling, but please go on. So then I told my grandmother about the delayed action mouse maker, and when I came to the bit about turning all the children of England into mice, she actually leapt out of her chair. I knew it. I knew they were brewing up something tremendous. We've got to stop them, I said. You can't stop witches. You took that power away. They just took that. You can't stop. Tremendous. We're going to have to stop. Okay. So they're going to have to figure out how to stop these witches before all the children of England disappear for good. Squeak.